October 3rd, 1993. The wreck of Super 64 lies broken in the dirt outside Mogadishu. Its tail snapped, rotors twisted like torn metal bones. Smoke curls from the shattered frame. Inside, the crew still fights to stay alive. Around them, a city of chaos tightens its grip. Two men, Master Sergeant Gary Gordon and Sergeant First Class Randy Shughart, stand between survival and certain death. Gordon slides a final .45 round into the chamber of his 1911 pistol. 35 minutes of gunfire behind him. An army of armed militia ahead. The odds aren't just bad, they're suicidal. His sidearm carries 7 rounds. He's already done the math. Shughart, 20 meters away, doesn't see his partner fall. He's too busy holding his sector, the left side of the downed helicopter. His M14 rifle cracked and nearly out of ammunition. Through the smoke, he spots Chief Warrant Officer Michael Durant, the pilot of Super 64, still slumped in his seat, squeezing bursts from an MP5. Somehow still fighting. Randy makes a choice that seals his fate. He'll recover Gordon's rifle, get to Durant, and then face whatever comes alone. Before he moves, he presses his personal Beretta M9 into Durant's shaking hands. 15 9mm rounds, his last line of defense. Good luck, he mutters. The quiet finality of a man who knows the odds. But how did two of America's most lethal snipers end up fighting a small war alone in Mogadishu's backstreets? To find that answer, we have to roll back the clock 37 minutes to 16:23 hours, when Gordon and Shughart were still airborne in Super 62, circling the nightmare below. From their helicopter, they watched the battle unravel. Rangers pinned down, Delta operators surrounded, convoys lost in Mogadishu's maze of alleyways. Then Super 64, Durant's bird, took an RPG hit to the tail rotor and spiraled into a hostile neighborhood. 3 times, Gordon requested permission to go down. 3 times, command refused. Too dangerous, they said. But Gordon and Shughart weren't calculating risk. They were calculating time. Time before Durant's crew was overrun. Time before propaganda footage of dead Americans hit every TV screen in the world. On the 3rd request, Gordon keyed his mic and said 5 words that rewrote the mission.
We can make a difference.
At 16:23 hours, both men prepared to drop into hell. Gordon carried a compact AR-15, a modified M16 with an 11.5-inch barrel, perfect for close-quarters combat. Shughart shouldered his M14, old but deadly, fitted with a red and iron sight combo that made him lethal at any range. From the cargo bay, Gordon fired to the wind buffet, 40 knots of airspeed, 100 miles per hour gusts, moving targets, gravity, and chaos. He adjusted for it all, every 1.3 seconds, faster than any computer. Below, Super 64 lay crippled in a clearing. Durant was alive but trapped. His crew was gone. "Sir, we need to be inserted," Gordon radioed again, calm but firm. "Delta Force doesn't beg. It states facts." The radio crackled back with silence. Hesitation from command, fear from above. The view from altitude was clear. Hundreds of armed militia swarming through the streets, converging on the wreckage of Super 64. 2 men against an entire city. Every calculation said the same thing. Suicides. But Gary Gordon and Randy Shughart weren't running numbers anymore. They were running principles. They knew what was at stake. Michael Durant, still alive, still trapped, represented not just a comrade, but the symbol of American resolve. If he fell into enemy hands, the world would watch. The headlines would write themselves. The militia's propaganda victory would echo louder than any bullet. When the wounded crew chief in Super 62 could no longer man the minigun, Gordon took over. The 2 snipers now had only their rifles. Gordon's AR-15 with maybe 6 magazines, and Shughart's M14 with about 10. That was roughly 380 rounds between them, against hundreds. Command's answer came back flat. Reaper 62, negative on insertion. Continue providing overhead support. Shughart and Gordon exchanged a glance. A silent conversation between men who'd fought side by side long enough to need no words. They both knew what it meant. Durant was running out of time. Then came 16:35. On the ground, Durant emptied another magazine from his MP5. Short bursts at shadows, moving closer. His defensive perimeter had collapsed to a few feet of twisted metal and courage. 1 man, 1 gun, surrounded on all sides. Above, the tension broke. Gordon's voice came through again, calm, steady, impossible to ignore.
"Sir, we can make a difference down there."
It wasn't a plea. It was a statement of purpose. Minutes passed like hours. The radio hissed. And then, finally, a reply. "Roger. You're clear to insert." The pilot, Mike Gafina, didn't waste breath confirming. He was already banking Super 62 into position, 100 meters from the crash, the closest he could safely get without joining it. The rotor screamed. Dust exploded into the air. Shughart jumped first, boots slamming into the dirt. His M14 was already in motion. Crack, thump, Thump, each round a clean calculation. Distance, wind, target threat, ammo left. Precision, not panic. Gordon followed 2 seconds later, covering the opposite flank with the short-barreled CAR-15. Its bark was sharp and fast, built for kind of chaos they just entered. 3 militia fighters charged from a doorway 30 meters out. 5 rounds later, all 3 were down. Together they advanced towards Super 64, leapfrogging, one moving while the other covered. But textbook tactics only work when the enemy follows a textbook. Mogadishu didn't. The militia came in waves, wild and uncoordinated, screaming through the dust. No formation, no tactics, just numbers. By 1645, Gordon and Shughart reached the crash. The scene was worse than they'd imagined. Crew members lay still. Only Durant was alive, trapped in the cockpit, bloody but conscious, still squeezing bursts from his MP5. "We're gonna get you out," Gordon said, already working at the buckles of the armored seat. Shughart set up a defensive perimeter, using the helicopter's broken frame for cover. Each shot from his M14 was deliberate, efficient, the sound of mastery. Every pull of the trigger wasn't about killing. It was about buying time. By the time Gordon dragged Durant free from the cockpit, the ground around Super 64 was turning into a cauldron of dust and blood. Shughart's rifle still cracked at rhythmic intervals, controlled, calm, unhurried. He was an embodiment of Delta discipline. Not a wasted movement, not a wasted shot. Gordon pulled Durant behind the nose of the helicopter, the most defensible angle they could find. The pilot's back was shredded with pain, but he was conscious, alive enough to fight. That alone justified everything the 2 Delta snipers had done. "How many magazines you got?" Gordon asked, voice low but firm. 2, Durant answered through gritted teeth. Gordon handed him 3 of his own SAR 15 mags. Make them count. At 1650, the situation turned critical. Shughart checked his gear. 4 20-round magazines left of the M14, plus his Beretta with 2 spares. Gordon had 3 magazines for SAR 15, his 1911 with 2. Altogether, maybe 200 rifle rounds, 50 pistol rounds, against hundreds of fighters closing in from every direction. The battlefield geometry shrank into a desperate triangle. Gordon to the north, Shughart to the south, Durant covering what little he could to the east. Every rush began the same, a ripple of RPG fire followed by a scream of gunmen charging from alleyways. And every time, they were met with measured, precise fire. The difference between militia and Delta was simple. One relied on volume, the other on precision. Somali fighters sprayed wildly. 30 rounds for every hit. Gordon and Shughart needed barely 1.5. For a while, math favored them. Each trigger pull was time. Each bullet a second of life. At 1655, the inevitable came. Gordon's CAR-15 clicked empty. Without hesitation, he dropped it and drew his 1911, the weapon of last resort. 7 rounds. 7 chances. He fired methodically, each shot deliberate. The recoil thudded against his palm, steady and confident. But pistol distance meant the enemy was close. Too close. Shughart M14 still cracked, but the sound came slower now. 60 rounds left. Then 50. Then 40. The rifle that ruled at 200 meters was now being used at 20. 10. Mogadishu's militia had learned quickly. Their attacks grew coordinated. They used cover, shadows, rooftops. Whistles and hand signals cut through the noise, crude but effective. Quantity had become its own kind of strategy. Durant could only watch through blurred vision. Every blink a struggle. He'd been ordered to save his MP5 for last resort, his ammunition nearly gone. Through the chaos, he caught glimpses of Gordon still moving, shifting positions, conserving motion like a machine built for battle. Then came the words every soldier dreads. "Randy, last mag." Gordon's voice didn't tremble. It wasn't a warning or a farewell. It was information passed between professionals who understood what that meant. The next few moments are debated even today. Durant would later testify that Gordon was hit first. Others say it was almost simultaneous. Either way, he fell facing the enemy, still fighting, still buying seconds with his last breath. Shughart was now alone. Randy Shughart's world had shrunk to the space between heartbeats. Dust, smoke, and the roar of gunfire pressed in from all sides. Gordon was down, Durant was wounded, and the mob was closing. His M14 was nearly dry. 10 rounds, then 5, then none. He ejected the last spent magazine. The metal clatter lost beneath the rising storm of war cries. Without hesitation, Shughart drew his Beretta M9. He fired in pairs. 2 shots, reset, 2 more. Each one deliberate, smooth, efficient. For every man who fell, 2 more filled the gap. When the final pistol round clicked empty, Shughart faced the kind of choice few men ever have to make. Retreat and die running, or advance and die fighting. He chose the latter. Moving low, he sprinted across the open ground toward Gordon's body. Bullets tore the dirt around him, But he didn't stop. He retrieved Gordon's AR-15, battered, blackened, and almost out of ammunition, and carried it back to Durant's position. Durant, bleeding and half-conscious, thought Shughart would use it himself. Instead, the sergeant placed a rifle in Durant's hands, along with his own Beretta, one last act of defiance against the inevitable. "Good luck," Shughart said quietly. 2 words. Simple, final. Then he turned back toward the swarm. Durant's last memory of Randy Shughart was the sight of a lone figure moving into the smoke. One man against the city. A shadow of courage standing where logic said none could stand. Moments later, the firing stopped. When Somali fighters finally overran the site, they found 2 Americans dead, surrounded by spent casings and the bodies of dozens of attackers. Against impossible odds, they had held their ground. Durant was captured soon after, beaten, bloodied, and paraded through the streets. But alive, he would endure 11 days of captivity before his release. Proof that Gordon and Shughart's sacrifice had not been in vain. Back in the States, their story spread quietly at first, through Delta circles, then across the military, then to the public. What those 2 men did in Mogadishu defied tactical logic, but defined warrior ethos. They didn't fight for glory. They fought because someone needed them to. For their actions, Master Sergeant Gary Gordon and Sergeant First Class Randy Shughart were each posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor, the first since Vietnam. Their citation reads like myth, but every word of it is real. 2 men saw the impossible, and instead of turning away, they volunteered. They stepped out of the helicopter, knowing they wouldn't come back. Their math was simple. 1 American life was worth their 2. And on that dirt road in Mogadishu, they made good on the equation. Durant lived. The legend of Gordon and Shughart endures. Not as a story of loss, but as a measure of courage few can ever comprehend. When the world remembers October 3rd, 1993, it remembers 2 soldiers who didn't ask how many, only how long they could hold. And they held, until there was nothing left to give.